We're now on the Amstel River. The round white-faced building standing next to the City Hall is the Muziek Theater, or Music Theater. It's home to the Dutch Opera, known for its daring productions, the Holland Sinfonia, and the world-renowned Dutch National Ballet. The Dutch may be known for their tolerant attitudes, but they also have strong opinions. This piece of architecture was met with heavy protests that have since simmered down. In fact, that's how it got its name, Stopera. It's derived from the movement against the construction, Stop the Opera.
The Magere Brug, otherwise referred to as the famous Skinny Bridge, stretches all the way across the Amstel River. Of Amsterdam's 1,500 or so bridges, this is the most famous. It dates back to the 17th century and was likely a narrow footbridge. Since then, it's been reconstructed more than once and grown wider with age. Legend has it that whoever you kiss while passing under the bridge will be your true love for life.
That's kissing.
No, ma davvero.
We're now on Herengracht, or the Gentleman's Canal. It was part of a careful plan to expand the city. In the early 17th century, a time of tremendous physical and economic growth, 3 new canals were laid out in concentric rings. The Herengracht was innermost. The Keizersgracht, or Emperor's Canal, was in the middle, followed by the Prinsengracht, or the Prince's Canal.
The wealthiest citizens, shipbuilders, merchants, investors, and politicians built elegant mansions on the Herengracht. The Keizersgracht was solidly middle class, while the Prinsengracht had a more industrial atmosphere. Of the 3 canals, the Prinsengracht was the only one that connected directly to the harbor, and its low sides were designed for loading and unloading cargo.
And so, the farther you lived from the city center, the lower your social class. Today, this would no longer hold true. All of the city center is expensive.
Especially on this canal, it's very expensive. One house can cost here 15 to 25 million. So there are no people living here. This is all lawyers, banks, consulates, and other criminals. Also 5-star hotels. Here on the left, this whole block is a 5-star hotel. It's the Waldorf Astoria. One night, cheapest room, 2,000 euros. Without breakfast. If you stay here, please invite me. Thank you.
Fünfzehn bis 25. 15 bis 25. Das ist auch hübsch.
Diese Fenster, ne?
Deswegen meinte er ja nur Konsulate, Anwälte, Banken und andere Kriminelle.
Get your camera ready. We're about to pass by one of the most photographed views in Amsterdam. The 7 arched bridges over Reguliersgracht or Regulierskanaal. This beautiful and unique view of all 7 bridges at once can only be seen from here on waters of the Herengracht. Our kind captain will be slowing down to give everyone a chance to catch a photo of this unique sight.
Da ist man noch. Oh.
Okay, paparazzi, you all have a good picture? Maybe when you sit on the other side you cannot take a good picture. I have a solution for this problem. Google or Instagram. Hashtag 7 bridges. 7 bridges with snow, 7 bridges with ice. Everything is possible on Google.
While nobles ruled elsewhere in Europe, here in Amsterdam, it was the self-made merchants. During the 17th century, they were earning as much as 700,000 euros a month. That's more than the average rich person earns today. The wealthiest of the wealthy lived here, on the Herengracht.
Today, almost all of these mansions are used for business, as people can no longer afford to live in them. An exception is the city's mayor, whose official residence is at number 502 Herengracht. Look for the great facade with white columns just before the bridge.
The golden age of the 17th century was a stellar time for Amsterdam. From politics and the economy to arts and science, everything flourished. And the city was now the most important trade center in Europe. There are many reasons for Amsterdam's astounding success. It had the largest and most progressive shipbuilding industry in Europe. Dutch traders sailed farther than anyone else to newly discovered lands in the Far East and to North and South America. They organized into companies like the Dutch East Indian Company and the Dutch West Indian Company. And the profits from trading staples like grain and exotics such as spices, porcelain, precious stones, and textiles were enormous.
Now let's slip back in time to the 17th century. Imagine a colorful scene. Gentlemen in fine clothing on the street, speaking different languages. Elegantly outfitted ladies stepping down into horse-pulled carriages. The clatter of wheels on cobblestones. And dare we mention it, an unpleasant waft of sewage coming from the canal.
Building restrictions limited houses to a width of no more than 6 meters, or 18 feet. But those who could afford got around this by buying 2 adjacent lots and building a double house. Some of these double homes even had 2 different facades. There was no restriction on depth, and with 20 to 40 rooms, a large private garden, and a coach house behind that, mansions often stretched all the way over to the next street.
We're now at the so-called Golden Bend of the Herengracht, the most lavish section of all. Imagine going into one of these sumptuous homes. On the first floor, an elegant entrance hall with marble floors, high ceilings, and chandeliers. Mirrors were strategically positioned to create an illusion of even more space. And single-lot houses would often have a fake door on the side of the entryway to make them appear bigger than they were.
Rooms were richly decorated with painted wallpaper, oil paintings, fine sculptures, and exotics such as Turkish rugs and Persian silks. In the second half of the 17th century, Parisian furniture, Louis XVI style, was very much in vogue.
As a gentleman, you might join your host in a deep-colored smoking room. A lady, your hostess would receive you in a light blue salon or tea room. Here, you'd sip imported tea from China while looking out over a beautifully manicured garden. No one ever sat in the gardens. It had ruined their fashionable white skin. Musical concerts and grand parties were common, and each house had many rooms dedicated to entertaining. For a first-hand glimpse of life inside an opulent canal house, there are two wonderful museums in the area, the Hilvig in Lopenhaus and the Village Holthausen.
So yeah, besides bicycles, also cars end up in the water, one a month. When you drive with your car in the water, you stay in your car, you call the fire truck and they save you for free. When you climb out and you wait on the wall, fire truck is not coming. Private companies coming and you need to pay €1,000. So you better stay in your car and put the music on and wait for the fire truck. They're coming already, They save you for free, with the fire truck. They save you for free. You will not drown, the 1 meter bicycles will save you. Look, on the right you see there is a railing in front of the cars. These little railings are paid by the insurance companies. It was cheaper to pay for 100 kilometers of railing than every week 3 cars in the water. That's why they paid for the railings.
As we pass by these richly decorated canal houses, there's so much to notice. So many flourishes and details, ornate door cases, sculptures, and of course the decorative gables at the roofline.
There are several different types of gables, and over the decades, they've gone in and out of fashion. See if you can spot them all. The oldest type is the spout gable. This basic triangular shape is seen only on warehouses. The 17th century step gable looks just as you'd expect, a series of steps. The neck gable, with its straight up and down sides and scrollwork decorations, came a bit later, followed by the bell gable, which has a more rounded, bell-like shape. By the 18th century, the cornice, a flat-top gable, was most popular.
There's one thing that all gables have in common: the hoisting beam. Staircases were so narrow and steep that furniture and goods were lifted to the upper floors via the hoisting beam, along with a good strong rope, a hook, and a pulley. Goods were generally stored up high to keep them dry during the city's frequent floods. There's a strong tradition of moving things this way, as even newly constructed houses have narrow stairways and are still equipped with hoisting beams.
Until the 18th century, house numbers didn't exist in Amsterdam. Instead, people relied on gable stones. These carved and sometimes colorfully painted stones were set into a house's facade, often above the door. Pictures made reference to the occupant's religion, profession, or their family crest. For example, a butcher might have a picture of a lamb, a dentist might have a tooth, a miller a windmill. Illiteracy was high, but such symbols were easy to understand.
As we ride along the canals, keep an eye out for gable stones. There are more than 650 throughout the city. As you find them, you can challenge yourself by guessing what they might mean.
You may have noticed that most of the city's houses are made of brick. That's because bricks could be made locally. They were very porous compared to bricks of today, and had to be oiled, tarred, or painted to protect them against the weather. You'll only see stone on the facades of the wealthiest of homes, because it had to be imported, costing much more than brick.
For the shoppers among us, to the west or left of here is a unique shopping district called Niederlande, or 9 little streets. Each street is a block long and full of quirky boutiques and specialty shops. It's a relaxing and fun place to explore.
Überlegt mal, das, wo wir das Hotel hatten, das ist ja auch Amsterdam. Aber das ist viel, viel neuer. Dann gibt es hier dieses Kulturbilder und hier diese ganzen schönen, diese reichen Dinge. In Hamburg ist es genauso.
Coming up on our left, at numbers 170 and 172, is a beautiful 17th century red brick mansion with white sandstone accents. This is the Bartolotti House, designed by Hendrik de Keyser, Amsterdam's most famous architect of the time. It was built for a very successful beer brewer named Willem van de Heuvel. He changed his name to Bartolotti to honor an Italian relative who had left him a sizable inheritance. The facade has 2 inscribed panels that reflect Bartolotti's and many other 17th century businessmen's values. They read, through talents and diligence, and through piousness and virtue.
Homes like Bartolotti's were designed to showcase their owners' enormous riches, and yet, this was a time when Calvinistic views predominated. Calvinism is a form of Christianity that emphasizes strict living and industriousness. the rich found themselves in conflict. Their religion required them to be humble, yet with so much wealth, how could they not show it off? Often they ended up quietly trying to outdo each other.
Today, the city's many canals are still used for transportation and for managing water levels. And they also have a new function, as a place to live. Amsterdam always seems to be short on housing, and during a real crunch in the 1960s and 70s, houseboats appeared as cheap places to live. The city now has around 2,500 of them. Some are old converted sailing vessels. Others are simply homes set on floating pads. As for cheap, not anymore. Houseboats are now connected to gas, water, electricity, and municipal sewage. And owners have to pay taxes just like anyone else.
Aber da saßen eine Frau. Ich habe auch Fahrrad gedacht. Ich habe auch gedacht, dass wir leider gehen. Ja.
Have you noticed how many homes have brick facades or faces? At first, Amsterdammers built their homes entirely out of wood, but after two massive fires at the end of the 16th century, the city took action. It passed a law requiring that all newly constructed buildings have facades made of non-flammable brick or stone. But all older buildings were still made of wood, and Amsterdam experienced one of its biggest fires along the Keizersgracht during the 18th century. Today, the risk of fire persists. Even though reinforced concrete is used for new construction, many of the older houses still have their original wooden skeletons.
Stimmt, Baustelle ist ja auch nicht viel. Aber glaube ich, das ist schon noch eine Erfahrung.
Daneben das extra den Herbst oder so. Wir sehen Leute im Sommer.
We are now approaching Brouwersgracht, or the Brewers Canal. This canal was part of the city's 17th century expansion. It connects the three main canals, the Herengracht, the Keizersgracht, and the Prinsengracht, and used to form the northwest border of the city. With its arched bridges, many houseboats, and beautiful architecture, it's now one of the most picturesque waterways in the city.
But that wasn't always the case. Many of the industries banned from residential areas ended up here. That included the smelly ones, like leather and whale oil processing. And of course, beer brewing, which gave the Brewers Canal its name. Because water quality was so poor, people turned to beer as a safer, healthier drink. Only the rich could afford wine, which was imported, but everyone drank beer.
Many of the buildings you see are old workshops and factories or warehouses. Merchants originally stored goods in their houses, but as trade increased, more and more warehouses were built. See if you can spot some. Look for triangular spout gables and windows with wooden shutters. The shutters help keep goods dry and dark.
Back in the 17th century, when Brouwersgracht was at the edge of the city, ships sailing for the Dutch East Indian Trading Company would come here to unload silks and spices from the Far East. And for a time, the Dutch West Indian Trading Company had an office along this canal. This powerful company traded in sugar, tobacco, tropical wood, furs and ivory, and had a monopoly on trade with the West Indies. Its ships also transported slaves from Africa to the Americas. An interesting side note, even though some of Amsterdam's merchants traded in slaves, they were never employed in Dutch households.
Aside from the East Indian and West Indian trading companies, the Noordse or Hollandse Bond was a third powerful company. It specialized in whaling, processing the meat as well as the whale oil, which in turn was used for lamp oil, soap, and paint, all very profitable commodities.
Today, the harbor bustle has moved elsewhere. Most of these historic buildings have been converted into trendy apartments. The atmosphere is much quieter and more pleasant. And luckily, the canal water is much cleaner than it used to be. It's now filled with a number of creatures, including fish and crabs. Several types of water birds are also happy to make these waters their home.
On the right hand side, coffee shop, coffee shop. No coffee, no coffee. If you want to drink coffee, go to cafe.
Ich würde hier erst mal reinfahren. Und zweitens das Haus machen. Ich würde hier auch nicht gerne als Mann fahren. Ich fand schon, als wir in die Niederlande reingefahren sind, diese ganze Spitze, ja, sind ja schon oh, ich bin sogar so schräger, schneller so anstrengend. Bergauf sitzen.
Very practical. Single-speed coasters with footbrakes. Sometimes with a crate in front for carrying everything under the sun, including children. In Amsterdam, expect to see everyone from the sophisticated business executive to the harried mother of three, pumping away on a two-wheeler.
Central Station, the transportation hub of Amsterdam, is built on 3 artificial islands and is supported by around 8,600 wooden piles. The building was designed by 2 architects, Kuipers and Van Glenn, and its front is really quite amazing. Made of red brick and white accents, it's a combination of Neo-Renaissance style and Neo-Gothic towers, and is called eclectical architecture.
Okay, folks, we are almost back at the point where we started. When you leave the boat, don't forget your personal belongings, because everything I find I sell on the flea market. Please take your trash with you outside, there is a bin. Please close your windows. Close your windows with a little black thing. You can close your windows. Schließen die Ramen. And I wish you all a pleasant holiday and a good stay in Amsterdam. Thank you.